I would highly recommend that you get yourself a cup of tea for this one, because it might be a bit long. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Andrea and today I'm going to be sharing with you my pile of possibilities / TBR for Jane Austen July. If you haven't heard of Jane Austen July before, it's basically a month-long readathon during the month of July where we read the works of Jane Austen as well as works related to her and do some other fun activities like watching her adaptations and other things. This readathon is hosted by Katie from Books and Things, Marissa from Blatantly Bookish, and Claudia from Spinster's Library. I will link down below their channels as well as the announcement video for the readathon. But let's get into the TBR / pile of possibilities. The first challenge is to read one of Jane Austen's main 6 novels. So for this I'm gonna go for the group read this year, which is Sense and Sensibility. I have this beautiful edition from Puffin in Bloom, which I just got and I'm in love with it. It's so beautiful. I actually haven't read Sense and Sensibility in a physical copy for a while. I've actually reread it multiple times through audiobook, but I really want to have a nice copy that is annotated and underlined. So this is going to be the book that I'm going to complete that first challenge with. However, if I do have time, I want to reread Emma, which is my favourite book of all time, my favourite Jane Austen novel. I named my cat after Emma Woodhouse. And I haven't reread a physical copy of this book in a long time, and I also want to annotate it and just really absorb the story. So the second challenge is to read something by Jane Austen that is not one of her main 6 novels. So for this, I'm also going to go with the group read, which this year is Sanditon and the Watsons. I've actually read all of Jane Austen's main 6 novels, Lady Susan and the Watsons, but I've never read Sanditon. And I'm really excited to read this. This is one of Jane Austen's unfinished works. This is what she was working on when she got ill and then eventually died. Because this is a pile of possibilities, more than just a TBR, I am gonna add another book that I would like to get to this month, but it's not a priority, which is another one of Jane Austen's works, and it's this one. This is Love and Friendship and Other Youthful Writings. So basically this is a collection of Jane Austen's juvenilia. I have started to read it a while ago. I think I read like the first short story. But I really want to read it. I don't think I will finish it this month, but maybe I will read a couple of stories. And from the little I've read and from what I've heard, Jane Austen's writing when she was younger is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It is very silly, it's very sort of absurd, and it's not very polite at all. It's basically the writings of a wild teenager. So I'm really interested to read this. So the third challenge is to read a non-fiction work about Jane Austen or about her time. The first book that I want to read for this challenge is actually a book I already started a while ago, but I would like to finish it during this month. And that is The Real Jane Austen, A Life in Small Things by Paula Byrne. This is a biography of Jane Austen that has a very interesting format to it. Basically what Paula Byrne does is she starts every chapter by introducing an object that Jane Austen might have owned or maybe her family owned or something. And through that object she tells us a little bit about Jane Austen's lives, what she would have known, what she was like, stuff like that. So the next book I would like to get to during this month is The Time Traveller's Guide to Regency Britain by Ian Mortimer. It's basically social and daily life history made accessible. I'm really excited to read this because I love this sort of history book that shows you what life might have been like for the majority of people, or just, you know, what they ate, what they wore, how they went about their daily lives. I love this sort of book. So I am really excited to get to this. So the next few books I have on ebook or audiobook, so I don't have a physical copy to show you. But the next one is a similar book to the one I just showed you, which is A Visitor's Guide to Jane Austen's England by Sue Wilkes. And this is sort of a book in the same line as the previous one, and it's a little bit shorter than the Time Traveler's Guide. That one I have on ebook, and I also have it in audiobook. If you are subscribed to Audible, it's available on the Plus catalog, so you don't have to like spend a credit or anything in case you're interested. So I might get to that as well. The other book that I have is The Genius of Jane Austen, Her Love of Theatre and Why She Works in Hollywood, also by Paula Byrne. And I think this book is interesting because I do want to see someone analyse why we have so many adaptations of Jane Austen from ages ago. Like, her novels have been adapted and reimagined so many times. We've had miniseries and, you know, YouTube video series and movies and all sorts of things, all sorts of types of adaptations of her work. So I do think it might be an interesting book to read. The next book I have is called Among the Janeites, A Journey Through the World of Jane Austen Fandom by Deborah Yaffe. I don't know. I think this book was written by a journalist that basically just follows a variety of Jane Austen's fans and dives deep into, you know, the huge fandom that there is around the works of Jane Austen, which, like, this concept has been even made into like movies and series. Like, the Jane Austen superfan has been made into like series and movies like Lost in Austen and Austenland. So that's pretty interesting. So, because I couldn't control myself, I also got another book that should be on its way and hopefully will arrive before the end of the month, which is a literary criticism book called What Matters in Jane Austen by John Mullan. And I've heard really good things about this book from the hostesses of Jane Austen July, so I'm really excited to read this book. And the last book that I promise I have for the third challenge is Elegant Etiquette in the 19th Century by James Mallory. And yeah, this is just a book about etiquette in the 19th century, in which Jane Austen lived like almost 2 decades. It's quite a short book, so I think I might get to that one. So yeah, that might be interesting. The next challenge is to read a retelling of a Jane Austen book or a work of historical fiction set in her time. So for this, I have a lot of options that I'm interested in. Again, I probably won't get to all of them, but a girl can dream. Who knows? July might be my best reading month ever. The book I'm most excited about for this challenge is The Murder of Mr. Wickham by Claudia Gray, which is basically a murder mystery whodunit set in the world of Austen, where basically there's like a house party featuring a lot of her characters from different novels, as well as the offspring of the couples in Jane Austen's novels. Mr. Wickham gets murdered, and we have to find out who did it. So the next book that I really want to get to is called Much Ado About Nada. I don't know how to pronounce that because part of me is like, should I pronounce it in Spanish? Because it is a pun in Spanish. You know, Much Ado About Nothing, Much Ado About Nada, which is nothing in Spanish. But it's also the name of the protagonist, so I don't know how to pronounce that. In any case, this book is by Uzma Jalaluddin. I've read 3 of her books before, and I've enjoyed all of them. I actually read another book of hers that was a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, called Ayesha at Last, and I really enjoyed that one. So I'm excited about this one because it's a retelling of Persuasion, which is another one of my favourite books. And yeah, this is a modern retelling of Persuasion. It's set in Toronto, and basically it follows Nada, whose life hasn't turned out the way that she wanted, and she gets basically dragged to a Muslim convention by her friend when she runs into Sane, with whom she has a past. So I'm guessing that's Captain Wentworth. So I'm really excited to read about that one. So the next one is a Regency romance book, so a historical fiction book, called A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting by Sophie Irwin. From what I understand, it's basically about a woman who must marry someone with a fortune in order to save her family. And yeah, I've heard really good things about this book again, and so I think it will be interesting. Another book that I am interested in and that I did get on Kindle is Unequal Affections by Lara Ormiston. And this one is basically it's not a retelling exactly, it's a variation on Pride and Prejudice. So basically she takes part of the story of Pride and Prejudice, but instead of having Lizzie refuse Mr. Darcy the first time he proposes, this author has her accepting him and seeing how the relationship might evolve when we have that Mr. Darcy is completely in love with Elizabeth, but Elizabeth doesn't feel that way about him, and how that might develop. So that sounds interesting. This was also a recommendation. I think I saw it on Katie's channel, but I might be wrong. But yeah, it sounded really cool, so I got it. The next book in my pile of possibilities, not TBR, is The Particular Charm of Miss Jane Austen by Ada Bright and Cass Grafton. This is a book where a Jane Austen superfan realises that Jane Austen has travelled through time and has become her neighbour, and she must help Jane Austen to get back to her time so she can actually finish writing her novels, and so history may go on as it was. This sounds really interesting. I've been sort of wanting to read a book with an element of time travel for a while, so I'm excited to get to this one. So the next book I have that might fit this challenge, I'm not sure I'm gonna get to this one because I am interested in it. I do want to read it eventually, but I don't know that it's a priority. This one is another Regency romance. It's Miss Latimer's Letter by Suzanne Alain. And this book is about a woman that has basically resigned herself to be a spinster, but she starts matchmaking, so I think maybe it will give sort of Emma vibes. And I read another Regency romance by this author called The Ladies Rewrite the Rules, and I was pleasantly surprised by that one. So I guess that's another recommendation for this challenge if you're interested. But I might get to that one, I might not, I don't know. So a book that I've had on my TBR for a while that also fits this challenge is The Austen Girls by Lucy Worsley. You might have heard of Lucy Worsley before. She actually did a biography of Jane Austen that I read a while ago. It's really good if you want to check it out. Lucy Worsley is a historian. She does a lot of documentaries for the BBC. She actually has a documentary about Jane Austen, which is really good, and I would recommend you go and watch it if you can. But this is a book of fiction. The Austen Girls is a book about Jane Austen's nieces and how they have recently entered the marriage market, and basically how their aunt, Jane Austen, is there to guide them through the marriage market. So that sounds really, really fun, really interesting, especially because it's a historical fiction book written by a historian that also did a biography on Jane Austen. So I think that's fascinating, and yeah, I hope I like it. So now coming on to the last one. This is a book I actually have already started, but I haven't finished because I tend to do that. I'm a mood reader and I also have ADHD, so I pick up a book, I read it, I'm enjoying it, and then for some reason I stop reading it. Even though I want to finish it and I'm enjoying it, I just leave it there because something else came into my mind, or I didn't feel it was the right time to read it, or whatever. But this one is Polite Society by Mahesh Rao. It's a modern retelling of Emma, which is my favourite book. It's set in India, and it's marketed sort of as a cross between Emma and Crazy Rich Asians. And I love the Crazy Rich Asians series by Kevin Kwan. I think it's fantastic. And also, I find Kevin Kwan's style to be a little bit Austen-esque in certain ways, in the way that he basically mocks the society that he's writing about. I do want to get to this one, but I have so many books on my pile. I don't know. The fifth challenge is to read a book by a contemporary of Jane Austen. For this one I have 4 options, but 1 priority. My main priority is going to be Belinda by Maria Edgeworth. And from what we know, Maria Edgeworth is one of the authors that Jane Austen might have read. And apparently this was quite a sort of controversial and a bit scandalous novel for the time. So it says, Belinda is an absorbing, sometimes provocative tale of social and domestic life among the English aristocracy and gentry. The heroine of the title, only too conscious of being advertised on the marriage market, grows in moral maturity as she seeks to balance self-fulfillment with achieving material success. Among those whom she encounters are the socialite Lady Delacour, whose brilliance and wit hide a tragic secret, the radical feminist Harriet Freke, the handsome and wealthy Creole gentleman Mr. Vincent, and the mercurial Clarence Hervey, whose misguided idealism has led him into a series of near-catastrophic mistakes. In telling their story, Maria Edgeworth gives a vivid picture of life in late 18th century London, skillfully showing both the attractions of leisured society and its darker side, and blending drawing-room comedy with challenging themes involving serious illness, obsession, slavery, and interracial marriage. That sounds amazing. But the next book that I am interested in reading, that I was supposed to read for last Jane Austen July, and I didn't end up getting to it, is The Female Quixote by Charlotte Lennox. This is supposed to be sort of a gender-swapped parody of Don Quixote, about just a very sort of idealistic young woman. I did start to read it, and I think I read like maybe a couple of chapters of book one. And I thought it was really funny, and it did bring to mind Jane Austen, because it does have that sort of sarcastic, witty sort of tone. So I would be excited to read this. I don't know if I'm going to get to it, because Belinda is quite long, and with these sort of books, especially with classics, I tend to take a longer time to read them because I like to annotate them, analyze them a little bit more, so I tend to take my time with them. So I might only get to one of these, but I am interested in the other ones as well. So one that I definitely do want to get to, because it's quite short, is a play by Elizabeth Inchbold. It's called Lover's Vows, and that is the play that they put on in Mansfield Park. I am really excited to get into that. I haven't read a play in such a long time, even though I actually really enjoy reading plays, so yeah, excited to get to that. So a book that I don't actually own yet, but I might get, depending on how my reading is going, because I've been wanting to read this book for a while, and when I heard some other people mention it for their TBRs for Jane Austen July, I just got excited to read it again. The book is The Secret Diaries of Miss Anne Lister, edited by Helena Whitbread, and basically these are the diaries of Anne Lister, who was a lesbian woman that lived in the first half of the 19th century. From what I understand, she wrote her diaries in code because she was writing about her relationships with other women. These diaries then were deciphered and compiled into, I think it's 2 volumes, by Helena Whitbread. And yeah, I think it's so interesting. There's actually a mini-series called Gentleman Jack that is about the life of Anne Lister. And I've only watched a couple of episodes, but I thought it was really good, and the costuming is fantastic. It's set during the 1830s, I think, and the fashion in that era, by the way, was insane. It was like everything big, everything huge, and in the show they actually stuck to the silhouette of the 1830s, and it's amazing. So if you want to watch that, then go ahead. But I am really interested in reading that. I hope I might get to it. So that's all the reading prompts for Jane Austen July, but there are 2 watching prompts. The first watching prompt is to watch a direct adaptation of a Jane Austen work, and for that I'm going to be watching the BBC 1995 miniseries of Pride and Prejudice, which I love. I've watched it so many times, but it's just such a comfort show. It's such a well done adaptation. So faithful, it's so beautiful, and yeah, I've already started to watch it. I started it yesterday, actually. The next one I want to get to is one that I haven't seen before, which is Love and Friendship, which is actually an adaptation of Lady Susan, for some reason. I don't know why, but I've heard it's quite good, and yeah, I'm interested to see that. I would also like to rewatch the Emma 2020. I quite liked it. It's not a perfect adaptation, but I do think it captured sort of Jane Austen's sense of humour quite well. I liked that it was colourful, the costumes were amazing. It did do some changes that I don't love, but all in all, I quite like it. The other one that I might get to is another movie, which is Sense and Sensibility from 1995, which I've already watched quite a few times, but I thought since I'm reading the book, I might as well watch the adaptation after I'm done with Sense and Sensibility. I don't know. So the last challenge for Jane Austen July is actually to watch a modern adaptation of a Jane Austen work. So my main priority for this is going to be the movie Fire Island, which is a gay retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and that sounds cool. So yeah, I think I might do a rewatch of Emma Approved, which is a YouTube miniseries based on Emma, and I might do Clueless. which is also a modern retelling of Emma. There are a few other things that I want to do during Jane Austen July that I might get to, maybe not, who knows. These are not related to any of the prompts, they are just things that I want to do because I'm in a Jane Austen mood. So the first one is I want to read a collection of poetry. So this is a collection of 18th century poetry, and I'm interested in it because it includes a couple of poems by Alexander Pope and William Cowper, which are poets that are actually mentioned in Sense and Sensibility, and apparently William Cowper was one of Jane Austen's favourite poets. So I would like to get to this. Another book that I don't think I'm going to get to, but I'll mention it anyway just in case, is The Jane Austen Society by Natalie Jenner. So this is a historical fiction book set after World War II in the village of Chawton, which is where Jane Austen lived, I think, the last few years of her life. And it's also where she was living when she published a lot of her books. And it's basically about a group of people from this village that are trying to save the legacy of Jane Austen in Chawton. Okay, so activities that I do know I'm going to get into. One of them is I want to do a project from this book, which is Jane Austen embroidery. And basically they've taken embroidery patterns from the Regency era and put them in sort of modern projects. So there's stuff like a quilted tablet sleeve, but it has an embroidery pattern from the Regency era. But you also have stuff like a reticule. I do really enjoy embroidery, and I haven't embroidered anything in a long time. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun to do some embroidery whilst I listen to one of my audiobooks for Jane Austen July. And another thing I want to do is, I got this puzzle and it's called Jane Austen's Book Club, and there she is. So I love doing puzzles whilst I listen to audiobooks. It's just so much fun. I know I sound like an old lady, but that's my idea of fun. So I'm definitely going to be getting into this. So the next thing I want to do is something that hasn't arrived yet, which is a cookbook, basically. It's called Tea with Jane Austen, and it's basically a book that contains recipes inspired by her novels and her letters. And I really want to try and bake something for Jane Austen July. Finally, I have the digital version of a book of Jane Austen inspired crochet called Ostentatious Crochet. I also like to do crochet, and so I might get to one of the projects there. So yeah, that is my huge pile of possibilities. Again, I won't get to all of it. Like, let's be honest, I'll probably get to like 4 books, maybe 5, but still, it is fun to dream. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I am going to be making vlogs about Jane Austen July and all of my reads, so do come back if you are interested. Let me know down below if you are participating in Jane Austen July, what's on your TBR, and what are you most excited about. So yeah, I'll see you soon. Please make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. So yeah, I don't know how to do an outro, so bye. Di hola. Say hello. Say goodbye.